September 9th, 2002, Moscow, Russia. The chess world is about to witness something that has never happened before in history. On one side of the board sits Garry Kasparov, the greatest chess player who ever lived, rated 2,838, the undisputed world number one. On the other side, a 26-year-old woman who everyone said would never beat him. Her name is Judit Polgar. Kasparov had once called women chess players circus puppets. He said they should stick to having children. But in the next 42 moves, Judit Polgar is about to make history. She's about to do what no woman has ever done: defeat the world's number one ranked player in competitive chess. This is the game that shocked the entire chess world. This is the game that proved everyone wrong. Let's dive in. Polgar opens with pawn to e4, controlling the center and beginning the game aggressively. Kasparov responds with pawn to e5, mirroring White's central control in this classical opening. Judit develops her knight to f3, attacking Kasparov's e5 pawn and developing a piece toward the center. Kasparov brings his knight to c6, defending the e5 pawn and developing his pieces. White plays bishop to b5, entering the Ruy Lopez, one of the oldest and most respected openings in chess. This pins Kasparov's knight to his king. Kasparov develops his knight to f6, attacking Polgar's e4 pawn and continuing his development. Judit castles kingside, bringing her king to safety and connecting her rooks. Kasparov boldly captures with knight takes e4, grabbing the central pawn and challenging Polgar immediately. White strikes back with pawn to d4, opening up the center and creating threats. Kasparov retreats his knight to d6, moving it to a safer square while maintaining central influence. Polgar captures with bishop takes c6, winning the knight and doubling Kasparov's pawns. Kasparov recaptures with d-pawn takes c6, accepting the doubled pawns but opening the d-file for his pieces. Judit advances with d-pawn takes e5, capturing the pawn and opening lines. Kasparov maneuvers his knight to 5, repositioning it to an active square. White plays queen takes d8 check, exchanging queens and giving check simultaneously. Kasparov is forced to recapture with king takes d8, losing castling rights but simplifying the position. Polgar develops her knight to c3, bringing another piece into play and controlling key central squares. Kasparov plays pawn to h6, preparing to develop his bishop while preventing any back rank issues. Judit activates her rook to d1 check, giving check and forcing Kasparov's king to move. Kasparov plays king to e8, moving back toward the center and escaping the check. White plays pawn to h3, creating luft for her king and preventing any piece invasions on g4. Kasparov develops his bishop to e7, finally getting his kingside pieces into the game. Polgar repositions her knight to e2, preparing to reroute it to better squares. Kasparov moves his knight to h4, bringing it toward Polgar's kingside to create threats. Judit captures with knight takes h4, eliminating the attacking knight. Kasparov recaptures with bishop takes h4, maintaining material balance. White develops her bishop to e3, activating her last minor piece and controlling important central squares. Kasparov plays bishop to f5, developing his bishop to an active diagonal. Polgar centralizes with knight to d4, jumping into a strong central square and eyeing multiple targets. Kasparov retreats his bishop to h7, repositioning it away from any tactical threats. Judit advances pawn to g4, gaining space on the kingside and preparing to push Kasparov's pieces back. Kasparov retreats his bishop to e7, moving it back to safety. White plays king to g2, improving her king position and preparing for the endgame. Kasparov pushes pawn to h5, creating counterplay on the kingside and trying to open lines. Polgar maneuvers knight to f5, occupying a powerful outpost and attacking Kasparov's bishop. Kasparov plays bishop to f8, retreating the bishop and maintaining flexibility. Judit advances king to f3, activating her king and bringing it into the game. Kasparov develops bishop to g6, placing it on an active diagonal. White plays rook to d2, doubling on the d-file and preparing to invade. Kasparov captures with h-pawn, takes g4 check. opening the h-file with check and creating threats. Polgar recaptures with h-pawn, takes g4, maintaining her pawn structure. Kasparov plays rook to h3 check, activating his rook with check and attacking Polgar's king. Judit moves king to g2, escaping the check and maintaining control. Kasparov repositions rook to h7, keeping the rook active on the h-file. White advances king to g3, bringing her king forward and supporting her pawns. Kasparov pushes pawn to f6, trying to break open the position and create counterplay. Polgar plays bishop to f4, activating her bishop and attacking key squares. Kasparov captures with bishop takes f5, exchanging pieces and simplifying the position. Judit recaptures with g-pawn takes f5, opening the g-file and creating a passed pawn. Kasparov captures with f-pawn takes e5, eliminating white's central pawn. White activates rook to e1, bringing her rook to an open file and creating threats. Kasparov develops bishop to d6, centralizing his bishop and defending his position. Polgar captures with bishop takes e5, winning the pawn and removing a key defender. Kasparov plays king to d7, activating his king and bringing it toward the center. Judit advances pawn to c4, gaining space and creating a passed pawn. Kasparov pushes pawn to c5, creating his own passed pawn and fighting for counterplay. White captures with bishop takes d6, eliminating Kasparov's bishop. Kasparov recaptures with c-pawn takes d6, maintaining material balance. Polgar plays rook to e6, invading the 6th rank and attacking Kasparov's d6 pawn. Kasparov activates rook from a8 to h8, bringing his rook into the game and preparing to double rooks. Judit captures with rook takes d6 check, winning the pawn with check and dominating the position. Kasparov plays king to c8, moving away from the checks and trying to escape. White plays rook from d2 to d5, bringing her second rook to the d-file and creating overwhelming pressure. Kasparov plays rook to h3 check, desperately trying to create threats with check. Polgar moves king to g2, escaping the check and maintaining her advantage. Kasparov plays rook to h2 check, continuing to give checks and fighting for counterplay. Judit plays king to f3, moving away from the checks and advancing her king. Kasparov plays rook from h2 to h3 check, bringing his second rook into the attack with check. White advances king to e4, boldly marching her king forward and supporting her pieces. Kasparov pushes pawn to b6, trying to create luft for his king and maintain some defense. Polgar plays rook to c6 check, giving check and forcing Kasparov's king to move. Kasparov plays king to b8, escaping to the corner but running out of squares. Judit plays rook to d7, invading the 7th rank and threatening Kasparov's remaining pawns. Kasparov plays rook to h2, trying to create threats against Polgar's king. White plays king to e3, improving her king position and supporting her attack. Kasparov activates rook to f8, bringing his rook to an open file. Polgar plays rook from c6 to c7, doubling rooks on the 7th rank and creating unstoppable threats. Kasparov captures with rook takes f5, winning the pawn but facing overwhelming pressure. Judit plays rook to b7 check, giving check and forcing Kasparov's king to move again. Kasparov plays king to c8, moving back to the center, but the position is hopeless. White plays rook from d7 to c7 check, giving another devastating check. Kasparov plays king to d8, desperately trying to escape. Polgar delivers the final blow with rook takes g7, capturing the g7 pawn and leaving Kasparov with no defense. Kasparov plays king to c8, but facing complete material deficit and with no counterplay remaining, Kasparov resigns. Judit Polgar has made history, becoming the first woman ever to defeat the world #1 in competitive chess. What an incredible achievement. If you enjoyed this legendary game, smash that like button, subscribe for more incredible chess battles, and drop a comment with your favorite move. See you in the next video.